Admiral Park Doan stood alone in the center of the great hall. The ceiling rose so high above him that clouds actually formed near the top. 12 alien species sat in floating platforms around him, looking down like gods judging an insect. This was the Galactic Council, rulers of known space for 40,000 years. And today, they would decide the fate of humanity. High Arbiter Vorath spoke first. He was made of living crystal, and light bent strangely around his body. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder in a cave. The Council has reviewed all evidence. We have studied your species for 20 years. We have reached our decision. Park Doan did not move. He was 62 years old, a military man who had spent his life preparing for threats he could see. He had not prepared for this. Humanity is dangerous, Vorath continued. In 300 years, you went from wooden ships to starships. In 50 years, you went from simple computers to artificial minds. No species in galactic history has grown so fast. This speed is unnatural. It is unstable. It is a threat. In the gallery above, Dr. Yoon Hannah gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. She was the chief scientist of the human delegation. She had shown the Council's star maps, medical research, art, music. She had tried to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. None of it mattered. The Council votes unanimously, Vorath said. Humanity is exiled to the Dead Zone, effective immediately. The Dead Zone. Park Doan knew the name. Every species knew it. A region at the edge of the galaxy where no life existed. Barren rocks. Dying stars. Surrounded by an energy barrier that no ship had ever crossed and returned. It was not exile. It was execution. You may take your ships, Vorath added. You may take your people. You have 30 days to leave Council space. Any human found after that time will be terminated. Park Doan finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady. High Arbiter, I must ask, what crime has humanity committed? We have started no wars. We have attacked no one. We have only existed. Vorath's crystal form flickered. Your existence is the crime, Admiral. You grow too fast. You adapt too well. Today you are weak. In 100 years, you could threaten everything we have built. The Council will not allow this. Park Doan nodded slowly. He understood now. This was not justice. This was fear. The Council was not punishing humanity for what they had done. They were punishing humanity for what they might become. He turned and walked out of the chamber. Without another word, General Kang Si-woo was waiting on the military vessel Iron Will when he received the news. He was a large man with a scarred face and hands that had seen 100 battles. When he heard the verdict, he slammed his fist against the wall hard enough to dent the metal. We should fight, he growled into the communication screen. We have weapons. We have ships. We can hurt them before they destroy us. Admiral Park's face was tired on the screen. And then what? They have thousands of warships. We have hundreds. We would lose, and they would use our attack as proof that they were right about us. So we just accept death? No, Park said. We accept exile. There is a difference. They expect us to die in the Dead Zone. We will not give them that satisfaction. We will survive. We will grow. And one day, General, they will understand their mistake. Kang Si-woo was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. What are your orders, Admiral? Gather every ship. Every civilian transport, every cargo hauler, every vessel that can fly. We leave in 20 days. The next 3 weeks were chaos. 800 million humans lived in Council space, spread across a dozen colony worlds. They had to leave everything behind. Homes, businesses, graves of loved ones. Some refused to go and were dragged onto ships by soldiers. Others went quietly, carrying only what they could hold. Captain Bae Tai-ho commanded the flagship Defiance. He was young for his rank, only 34, but he had earned his position through skill and courage. Now he stood on the bridge and watched the fleet assemble. 12,000 ships hung in space around him, ranging from massive colony transports to tiny personal craft. It is the largest fleet in human history, his first officer said quietly. Tai-Ho shook his head. It is the only fleet in human history. If we fail, there will never be another. Director Shin Nari handled the impossible task of organization. She was the head of intelligence, a small woman with sharp eyes who noticed everything. She assigned families to ships. She distributed food and medicine. She made sure the fleet had enough supplies to survive the crossing. On the 30th day, the fleet departed. Millions of humans watched from viewports as Council space fell away behind them. Many were crying. Some were praying. A few were simply silent, too numb to feel anything. The barrier appeared ahead of them. A wall of swirling energy that stretched across space like a curtain between life and death. No probe had ever returned from beyond it. No signal had ever come back. Captain Bei Tai-Ho opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is defiance. We cross together. Stay in formation. Protect each other. Whatever happens on the other side, we face it as one people. The Defiance entered the barrier first. The ship shook violently. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Tai-Ho gripped his chair as his crew fought to maintain control. Through the view screen, he could see only blinding white light. Then they were through. The light faded. Tai-Ho looked upon the dead zone for the first time. Black space. Distant, dim stars. No planets visible. No stations. Nothing but emptiness stretching in all directions. Behind him, ships emerged from the barrier one by one. Some were damaged. Some were on fire. 312 ships did not make it through. 17,000 people died in the crossing. Director Shin Nari stood beside Admiral Park on the observation deck of the command ship. She looked at the dark stars ahead and felt something heavy settle in her chest. "What do we do now?" she asked. Admiral Park was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard as iron. "Now we become what they feared we would become. They wanted to bury us in darkness. Instead, we will build an empire in it. And one day, the galaxy will remember what they did here. They will remember, and they will regret." The fleet moved forward into the unknown. Behind them, the barrier sealed shut. There was no going back. There was only forward into the dark, where humanity would either die or become something the galaxy had never seen before. The first year in the dead zone was the hardest. The fleet found a rocky planet orbiting a weak yellow star. They called it New Sol. It had thin air, cold temperatures, and soil that grew nothing. But it had water frozen beneath the surface. And that was enough to begin. General Kong Su-woo led the first landing parties himself. He was not a man who gave orders from safety. He carried equipment alongside young soldiers. He dug trenches in frozen ground. When a shelter collapsed and trapped 3 workers, he pulled them out with his own hands. The first winter killed 12,000 people. The cold was brutal. Food was limited. Medicine ran out. Families huddled together in metal shelters that shook with every wind. Children asked their parents when they could go home. The parents had no answer. Dr. Yoon-hana refused to let despair take hold. She gathered every scientist in the fleet and put them to work. The council said this place was dead, she told them. Let us prove them wrong. Her team studied the soil. They analyzed the atmosphere. They tested the water. Slowly, they learned to work with what they had. They built greenhouses that could grow food in weak sunlight. They created machines that pulled oxygen from ice. They found ways to heat shelters using nothing but rocks and pressure. By the 3rd year, New Sol had 50,000 permanent residents. By the 5th year, it had 200,000. The death rate dropped. The birth rate rose. Humanity was surviving, but Dr. Yoon-hana discovered something that changed everything. While exploring an ancient crater on New Sol's largest moon, her team found metal beneath the surface. Not natural metal. Manufactured metal. They dug deeper and found a structure buried under millions of years of dust. It was a building made by hands that were not human. "This is impossible," her assistant said, staring at the alien symbols on the walls. The council said no one ever lived here. Hannah ran her fingers over the strange writing. The council lied. Over the next decade, humanity found more structures, more technology, more evidence of a civilization that had existed long before the Council. Dr. Yoon Hanna named them the Architects. They had been advanced beyond anything the galaxy knew today, and they had been erased from history. The Architect technology was damaged and incomplete, but even fragments were valuable. Engineer Oh Minho, a quiet man who preferred machines to people, spent 15 years studying a single Architect device. When he finally understood it, he laughed until tears ran down his face. "It is a drive system," he explained to Admiral Park Doan. "But not like ours. Not like the Council's. This can fold space. A journey of weeks becomes a journey of hours. Minutes, even." Park was old now. His hair was white and his hands trembled slightly, but his mind was still sharp. "Can you build it?" Minho nodded. "Give me 5 years and every engineer we have." It took 7 years, but Minho delivered. The first pulse drive was installed on a small test ship. It vanished from orbit around New Sol and reappeared near a star system 300 light-years away. The journey took 4 minutes. Everything changed after that. With the pulse drive, humanity spread across the dead zone like water filling an empty vessel. They found more Architect ruins, more technology, more resources. 20 colonies became 100. 100 became 500. Barren moons became cities. Dead planets became gardens. Admiral Park Doan established the Terran sovereignty in the 42nd year of exile. It was a government built for a people who had learned to trust no one but themselves. Strong, efficient, and united. Every human world had a voice. Every citizen had a purpose. Director Shin Nari, now old and gray, created the Silent Watch. It was an intelligence network that reached beyond the barrier. She sent tiny probes disguised as space debris into Council territory. They watched. They listened. They reported everything back. "The Council thinks we are dead," she told Park during one of their last meetings. "They stopped looking for us 40 years ago. They have forgotten we exist." Park smiled weakly. He was dying. His doctors had given him weeks. "Good," he said. "Let them forget. When they remember, it will be too late." General Kong Siwoo sat beside Park's bed on the final night. They had served together for 60 years. They had built something impossible together. Now one of them was leaving. "Do you have regrets?" Siwoo asked. Park looked out the window at the city lights of New Sol. When they arrived, it was nothing but rock and ice. Now there were millions of people living in warmth and safety. Children were going to school. Families were eating dinner. Life was happening. "They gave us nothing but darkness," Park said. His voice was barely a whisper. "And we filled it with light. How could I regret that?" He died an hour later. The entire Terran sovereignty mourned for 30 days. But the work continued. New generations grew up knowing nothing but the dead zone. To them, it was not a prison. It was home. They built ships faster and stronger than anything the Council had. They developed weapons that could disable enemies without killing them. They created shields that could stop attacks the Council could not imagine. Dr. Yoon Hanna died at age 94, surrounded by students who would continue her work. Her final discovery was her greatest. She found evidence that the Council's founders had destroyed the Architects deliberately. They feared the Architects' power, so they erased them. Just as they tried to erase humanity, history repeats, Hanna wrote in her last journal. But this time, the ending will be different. 65 years after exile, the Terran sovereignty controlled over 1,000 worlds. They had technology that matched or exceeded the Council's. They had a fleet of warships that could cross the galaxy in days. They had 8 billion citizens who remembered what the Council had done to their ancestors, and they were ready. The barrier still stood between them and the rest of the galaxy. But barriers could be crossed. The Council had sent humanity to die in darkness. Instead, humanity had built an empire. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that exile was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Warlord, Dren was bored with easy prey. For 30 years, he had led the Karos Dominions raiding fleets against weak colonies and merchant ships. His people were conquerors, slavers, pirates. They operated outside council law. The council looked away because the Karos only attacked species that did not matter. When Dren heard rumors about the dead zone, he became curious. The barrier had weakened in places. His scouts reported energy signatures beyond it. Someone was living in the graveyard of space. Refugees, his second officer guessed. Survivors from some forgotten exile. They will have nothing worth taking. Dren smiled with too many teeth. Then we will take them instead. Slaves are always worth something. 50 Karos warships crossed through a weak point in the barrier. They expected to find desperate survivors living in broken ships. They expected easy victory. They expected wrong. Admiral Bei Tai-ho received the alert on the bridge of the Defiance too. He was 69 years old now, gray at the temples, but still sharp. The original Defiance had been retired to a museum on New Seoul. This ship was 3 times larger, armed with weapons that Tai-ho had helped design. 50 hostile vessels have crossed the barrier, his tactical officer reported. Configuration matches Karos' Dominion. They are heading toward Haven's Rest. Haven's Rest was a small colony of 200,000 people, mostly farmers, mostly families. Exactly the kind of target the Karos preferred. Tai-ho opened a channel to the defense fleet. All ships, engage pulse drives. Intercept formation. We reach Haven's Rest before they do. The Terran fleet vanished from their patrol routes and reappeared in the Haven system 40 seconds later. The Karos were still 2 hours away at their best speed. Tai-ho used the time to position his ships perfectly when Warlord Dren arrived. He found 30 Terran warships waiting in a curved formation. The largest ship was bigger than anything he had ever seen. Its hull was smooth and dark, with weapons that glowed faintly along its sides. "What is this?" Dren demanded. "Who are you?" A face appeared on his communication screen. A human face. Old, calm, and completely unafraid. "I am Admiral Bei Tai-ho, of the Terran Sovereignty," the human said. "You have entered our space without permission. You will withdraw immediately, or you will be stopped." Dren laughed. The sound was ugly and confident. "Terran. There are no Terrans. The humans were exiled 60 years ago. They died in the dead zone, like the animals they were." Tai-ho's expression did not change. "We did not die, Warlord, and we are no longer animals. This is your only warning." Dren cut the communication and ordered his fleet to attack. It was the worst mistake of his life. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Terran ships moved in ways Karos sensors could not track. They appeared in one position, fired, and vanished before return fire could reach them. The weapons they used did not destroy ships. Instead, they disabled them. Power systems failed. Engines went dark. Weapons stopped working. One by one, the Karos warships went silent, drifting helplessly in space. Not one was destroyed. Not one Karos soldier was killed. But the entire fleet was captured. Dren watched from his command chair as Terran soldiers boarded his ship. They moved with precision and discipline. They secured his crew without violence. When they reached the bridge, a young officer informed him that he was now a prisoner of the Terran sovereignty. "This is impossible," Dren whispered. "You are supposed to be dead." The young officer smiled slightly. "We are full of surprises." Warlord Dren was brought before General Kong Yuna. She was the daughter of General Kong Siwoo, who had died 5 years earlier. She had inherited her father's strength and her mother's intelligence. At 42, she was the supreme commander of all Terran military forces. "He came to our space looking for slaves," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were cold. "You found an empire instead. I am going to give you a choice, Warlord." Dren straightened in his chair, trying to maintain dignity. "What choice?" "You can remain here as our prisoner. We will treat you fairly. You will have food, shelter, and safety. Or you can return to the galaxy and tell everyone what you saw here today." Yuna leaned forward. "Tell them that humanity survived. Tell them what we have become. Let the Council know that their exile did not destroy us. It made us stronger," Dren considered for a long moment. "Prison, Even comfortable prison was not acceptable to a Karos warlord, and the story he could tell would make him famous. He agreed to leave. A week later, Dren crossed back through the barrier in a small transport ship. Behind him, his entire fleet remained in Terran hands, along with all his soldiers. He had nothing left except his life and his story. He told that story to everyone who would listen. Ambassador. Kira of the Lunary heard the news and felt something strange in her chest. Hope, perhaps. She had been young when the humans were exiled. She had opposed the decision privately, but had been too weak to speak against it publicly. The guilt had followed her for 60 years. Now she reached out through secret channels to the Terran sovereignty. Director Cho Ara, who had replaced Shinnari as head of intelligence, received her message. The council is afraid, Kira said. High Arbiter Vorath has called emergency sessions. The Veltari are demanding military action, but some of us remember what we did to your people. Some of us feel shame. Ara studied the alien diplomat through the communication screen. The Lunary looked fragile, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes, but her voice was steady. What do you want, Ambassador? I want to help prevent another tragedy, Kira said. The Veltari will push for war. Vorath is afraid enough to consider it. If that happens, billions will die. Human and alien both, Ara considered this. And why should we trust you? Your people voted to exile us. Kira lowered her head. Because I have spent 60 years wishing I had been brave enough to stand against that vote. I cannot change the past, but perhaps I can help shape the future. If you will let me, Director Choera reported the conversation to General Kong Yuna. They discussed it for hours. Trust was difficult after everything humanity had suffered, but isolation was also dangerous. They needed information about what the council was planning. They decided to accept Kira's help. Cautiously. Meanwhile, High Arbiter Vorath sat alone in his chambers on the station Eternal Accord. Warlord Dren's report played on a screen before him. 30 Terran warships. Technology that exceeded Council standards. A disciplined military that defeated 50 Karos vessels without taking a single casualty. Vorath remembered the day he had sentenced humanity to exile. He remembered the human admiral who had stood before him without fear. He remembered thinking that the humans would die quickly in the dead zone and the galaxy would be safer. He had been wrong. Terribly, completely wrong. Possible, he whispered to the empty room. We sent them to die. But they had not died. They had grown. They had built. They had become exactly what Vorath had feared. And now they were on the other side of the barrier, waiting. The galaxy was about to learn that exile had consequences. And those consequences were coming home. The Council sent a diplomatic ship through the barrier 2 years after Warlord Dren's defeat. It carried representatives from 7 species, including the Veltari military commander and 2 council arbiters. They expected to negotiate from a position of strength. They expected to find a small civilization struggling to survive. They expected to offer humanity a minor place in the galactic order, perhaps a few worlds under council. Supervision, they were wrong about everything. The diplomatic ship emerged from the barrier and immediately detected thousands of energy signatures. Cities on worlds that should have been dead, shipyards producing vessels at rates that seemed impossible. A civilization of 8 billion people spread across more than 1,000 star systems. This cannot be accurate, the lead arbiter said, staring at the sensor readings. This would make them larger than half the council species. The Veltari commander said nothing. His people were warriors. He recognized military power when he saw it, and what he saw terrified him. General Kong Yuna met the delegation on the station, Unity's Edge. She had chosen the location carefully. The station was enormous, built from both human technology and architect designs. It was a statement. We are not refugees anymore. Welcome to the Terran sovereignty, Yuna said. Her voice was polite, but cold. You are the first official council visitors since our exile. The lead arbiter, a tall being with 4 arms and silver skin, cleared his throat. General, the council wishes to discuss the future relationship between our peoples. Surely we can move past the unfortunate events of the past. Unfortunate events. Una repeated the words slowly. You mean the exile? The death sentence. The 40,000 years of lies about the dead zone. The arbiter shifted uncomfortably. Those decisions were made by previous leadership. High Arbiter, Vorath is prepared to offer. Vorath voted for our exile, Una interrupted. He is still in power. Nothing has changed except our ability to fight back. The negotiations went poorly. The Council offered humanity limited territory under Council oversight. Una rejected it. The Council offered trade agreements with restrictions. Una rejected those too. The Council grew frustrated. Una remained calm. On the third day, Dr. Yoon Mingi joined the discussions. She was the granddaughter of Dr. Yoon Hanna, and she had spent her entire life studying the architects. She carried a data device containing evidence that would change everything. Before we continue, Minji said, I would like to share something with the delegation. She activated the device. Holographic images filled the room. Ancient structures. Destroyed cities. Mass graves on a scale that defied comprehension. The architects, Minji explained. A civilization that existed 42,000 years ago. They were more advanced than any species alive today. They were peaceful. They created technology that could have benefited the entire galaxy. The council representatives watched in growing discomfort. They were destroyed by a coalition of species who feared their power. Mingi continued. Those species wiped out the architects, stole their technology, and built the Galactic Council on the ashes of genocide. Then they declared the architect territories a dead zone and pretended nothing had ever existed there. The lead arbiter stood abruptly. These are lies. Fabrications designed to. These are historical records recovered from architect ruins, Minji said calmly. Records that survived because the Council's founders were not thorough enough in their destruction. Would you like me to continue? I have evidence connecting 3 current Council species directly to the genocide. The room fell silent. Una spoke into that silence. You exiled us for growing too fast. For being too adaptive. For the crime of having potential. And now, we know the truth. The Council was built on fear. Fear of anything different? Fear of anything that might challenge your control. The architects frightened you, so you destroyed them. We frightened you, so you tried to destroy us. She stood and looked at each delegate in turn. It did not work. Nothing you do now can undo what we have learned. The only question is what happens next. The delegation returned to Council space with Minji's evidence. Some species were horrified. Some refused to believe it. The Veltari dismissed it entirely. Commander Raylos of the Veltari was a warrior who had never lost a battle. He stood before the full council and argued for immediate military action. The humans are dangerous, he said. They have technology we do not understand. They have evidence that could destabilize the council. We must strike now, before they grow stronger. High Arbiter Voreth hesitated. Part of him knew that Relos was right about the danger. But another part remembered Dr. Yoon Minji's calm voice explaining how his ancestors had committed genocide. How the council was built on bones. We will prepare defenses, Vorath said finally. But we will not attack first. Not yet. Raylos accepted the decision publicly. Privately, he began planning his own operation. 3 months later, a Voltari strike force attacked the border colony of Haven's Rest. They came without warning, without declaration, without council authorization. Raylos believed that a quick victory would force the council to support a full war. Haven's Rest was the same colony that Warlord Dren had targeted years earlier. The same colony that Admiral Bay Tai Ho had defended, but Tai Ho was not there this time. Instead, the colony was protected by an automated defense grid based on architect technology. The Veltari ships fired their weapons. The shots never reached the colony. A shimmering barrier appeared around Haven's Rest, absorbing every attack. The energy was not blocked. It was converted, stored, redirected. Then the colony fired back. A single burst of energy disabled the lead Veltari cruiser. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, Half of Raylus's strike force was drifting without power. General Kong Yuna received word of the attack within seconds. She had been expecting something like this. Director Cho Era's intelligence network had warned her that Raylus was unstable. He attacked without council authorization, Era reported. Vorith did not approve this. Yuna nodded slowly. Then we respond proportionally. Disable their fleet. Capture their ships. But do not destroy anything. Do not kill anyone. We do not have to. General, they attacked us. We will defeat them. But we will do it in a way that shows the galaxy who we are. Yuna looked at her tactical display, where the disabled Veltari ships drifted helplessly. The council called us dangerous. They said we were violent and unstable. We will prove them wrong. We will prove that we are better than they are. The Terran counterattack was surgical and devastating. Ships appeared using pulse drives, disabled Veltari vessels with precision strikes, and vanished before anyone could react. In less than an hour, the entire strike force was neutralized. Commander Relos was captured alive. His flagship was boarded by Terran Marines who treated his crew with respect and provided medical care for the wounded. When Relos demanded to know why they did not simply kill him, the Marine commander shrugged. "Those are not our orders," she said. "We are not murderers. We are soldiers." Ambassador Kira addressed the council the next day. Her voice shook with emotion as she spoke. "You exiled them for being dangerous," she said. "You were right. They are dangerous. They have technology that surpasses ours. They have military forces that defeated the Veltari in minutes. But they did not destroy us. They did not kill when they could have. They showed mercy." She looked directly at Vorath. "You created this. Every ship they build, every weapon they forge, every soldier they train, this is your legacy. The question now is whether we have the wisdom to make peace or whether we will force them to make war." Vorath had no answer. For the first time in his long life, he did not know what to do. The humans were everything he had feared, and everything he had feared was his own fault. The galaxy held its breath. Waiting to see what would happen next, the Veltari invasion began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. 300 warships crossed into the Terran expanse, the largest military operation in Council history. Commander Relos had been released after his failed attack on Haven's Rest, and he had spent 6 months convincing the Veltari High Command that humanity must be destroyed before they grew even stronger. High Arbiter. Vorath had opposed the invasion. He had been overruled for the first time in his career. The council was fracturing. Fear was winning over wisdom. General Kong Yuna stood on the bridge of the command ship, Eternal Dawn, and watched the Veltari fleet approach on her tactical display. 300 ships. Millions of soldiers. The largest force ever assembled against humanity. Admiral Bei Taiho stood beside her, his old hand steady on the railing. "They are committing everything," he said quietly. "If we defeat them here, they will have nothing left." Yuna repeated. "You doubt our chances?" Taiho smiled slightly. "I have fought aliens 3 times in my life. We won all 3. But I have never faced anything like this." Yuna turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships. Encryption level 0. I want the Veltari to hear this." The channel opened, and Yuna's voice carried across space to both fleets. "All Terran vessels, this is General Kong Yuna. Today we face the largest threat in our history. 300 enemy ships have entered our space with orders to destroy us. They come because they fear us. They fear what we have built. They fear what we might become." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Young men and women who had been born in the Terran expanse, who had never known exile, who only knew that their ancestors had survived impossible odds. "My grandfather, General Kong Siwu, was there when we crossed the barrier into the dead zone. He told me stories about those first years. The cold, the hunger, the despair. But he also told me about hope, about determination, about the human spirit that refuses to die no matter how hard the universe tries to kill it." She took a breath. "Today, we show the galaxy what that spirit can do. Today we execute Operation Silence, All ships, engage. Operation Silence was a strategy that no other species could have conceived. It required ships that could appear and disappear across vast distances in seconds. It required perfect coordination between hundreds of vessels. It required warriors who trusted each other completely. The Terran fleet vanished. Commander Relos watched his sensors in confusion. One moment, the human fleet was there. The next, it was gone. Then they began to reappear. Human ships materialized behind the Veltari formation, fired and vanished before return shots could be launched. They appeared above, below, to the sides. They struck at engine systems, weapons arrays, communication nodes. They never stayed in one place long enough to be targeted. The Veltari were some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Their ships were powerful and well-armed, but they had never fought an enemy that did not stay still. They could not adapt to an enemy that refused to follow the rules of normal combat. Track them, Relo shouted. Predict their movements. They must have a pattern. But there was no pattern. The human commanders were making decisions in real time, adjusting their attacks based on what they saw, communicating through systems that responded faster than thought. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. After 2 hours, 100 Veltari ships were disabled. After 4 hours, that number doubled. The Terran fleet had not lost a single vessel. Then, engineer. Junsu activated the architect array. Junsu was the son of Ominho, who had died 15 years earlier. He had inherited his father's brilliance and his obsession with architect technology. The array was his greatest creationa network of devices, positioned throughout the Terran expanse that could generate a field powerful enough to disable technology across an entire star system. Junsu reported from his station on Eternal Dawn. The array is ready. On your command? Yuna looked at the tactical display. 100 Veltari ships were still fighting. They were losing, but they were causing damage. Terran casualties were mounting. Every minute the battle continued, more of her people died. Do it, she said. JUNSU activated the array. A wave of energy expanded outward from hidden stations, passing through space like a ripple through water. When it touched the Veltari ships, everything stopped. Engines, weapons, life support, sensors, every system went dark. 300 warships drifted silently in space. An invasion force that had come to destroy humanity was now completely helpless. On the Veltari flagship, Commander Relos sat in darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, powered by chemical batteries that the array could not affect. He could hear his crew shouting in confusion and fear. A voice came through the emergency communication system. Human calm. Commander Relos, this is General Kang Yuna. Your fleet has been disabled. You cannot move. You cannot fight. You cannot escape. Relos closed his eyes. This was the end. The humans would destroy them now. It was what he would have done. I am dispatching rescue vessels to your position, Yuna continued. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your crews will be given food, water, and shelter. When you are ready, we will discuss terms for your return to Council space. Relos opened his eyes. You are not going to destroy us. No, Commander. We are not. Why? There was a pause before Yuna answered. Because we are not what you think we are. We never were. The rescue operation took 3 days. Terran ships moved through the disabled fleet, evacuating crews, treating injuries, providing supplies. Not one Veltari soldier was harmed. Not one ship was destroyed. The humans could have killed them all. Instead, they saved them. Commander Relos was brought aboard Eternal Dawn. He expected chains and cells. Instead, he was given a private room, clean clothes, and a meal. When General Kang Yune came to speak with him, she sat across a simple table, not a throne. Why? He asked again. Why show mercy? We came to destroy you. Yuna considered the question for a long moment. My grandmother was 5 years old when her family was loaded onto a ship and sent to die in the dead zone. She remembered the council delegates laughing as the fleet. She remembered thinking that the galaxy was cruel and cold, and that kindness was only for fools. She leaned forward slightly. She was wrong. Kindness is not weakness. Mercy is not foolishness. We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. That choice is our strength, not our weakness. The news of the Veltari defeat spread across the galaxy in days. 300 ships disabled without a single one destroyed. Thousands of soldiers captured and treated with dignity. An invasion force turned into evidence of human power and human restraint. The council collapsed. Species that had supported the invasion withdrew in shame. Species that had opposed it demanded change. High Arbiter Vorath resigned his position and vanished into private life. Unable to face what he had done, Ambassador Kira stepped forward to lead a reformation movement. She invited humanity to help build a new galactic order, not as subjects, not as threats. As equals, Director Cho Era negotiated the terms. No exile, no barriers, no second-class species. Every civilization would have representation. Every voice would be heard. The old council chambers were torn down and a new hall was built in their place. Human engineers worked alongside alien craftsmen. The construction took 2 years. When it was finished, General Kong Yuna attended the opening ceremony. The hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some had supported humanity. Some had opposed them. Some had tried to destroy them. Now they all sat together under one roof. Ambassador Kira found Yuna on the observation deck after the ceremony. The deck looked out at the stars, the same stars that had once been divided by fear and hatred. "Do you hate us?" Kira asked softly. "For what we did to your people?" Yuna was silent for a long time. She thought about her grandmother, who had been a child on the exile fleet. She thought about her mother. Born on a frozen world that humans had made green through sheer determination. She thought about her own life, spent building and protecting a civilization that should never have existed. "My grandmother was born in the exile fleet," Yuna said finally. "My mother on a dead world we made green. I was born in a civilization built from nothing. We were supposed to die in the darkness. Instead, we built an empire. We developed technology that changed what was possible. We raised children who knew nothing of the old fears and hatreds." She turned to look at Kira. The ambassador's eyes were wet. "Hate would be a waste of what we have become," Yuna said. "The council tried to destroy us, and they failed. Not because we were stronger, not because we were luckier. They failed because they underestimated what humans can do when they have no choice but to survive." She looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there was the barrier that had once sealed humanity away from the galaxy. It was still there, but it no longer mattered. Humanity had crossed it. Humanity had built beyond it. Humanity had proven that exile was not the end. "The galaxy feared us," Yuna said. "They were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they imagined. They feared we would destroy them. Instead, we showed them how to be better. That is the real power of humanity. Not our weapons, not our technology. Our ability to become more than what others expect us to be." Kira nodded slowly. "And what happens now?" Yuna smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had shown in months. "Now we build something new, together, and we make sure that no species ever has to face exile again. No child ever has to wonder if the universe is cruel and cold. That is what we fought for. That is what we won." The observation deck fell silent. 2 figures stood together, human and alien, looking at a galaxy that had been forever changed by a species that refused to die. The exile was over. The empire was built, and humanity's power was not in destruction. It was in hope.